Hello, everyone, and welcome to a spoiler review for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings here from the
Geek
Buddies!
Hey! We are so excited to be here to talk our spoiler review. We did release our non-spoiler review over the weekend, and for those of you who watched the show religiously, you got our non-spoiler review in the regular time slot when we drop our regular show. But we thought we'd go and jump into a spoiler review and break this whole thing down, because doing that non-spoiler review amongst the three of us, it was hard. It was hard because there was so much to talk about. We're going to dive into all of it. And in case this is your first time watching us, let's introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw, John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Outlaw Nation and the Geek Buddies. Mike?
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
Shan?
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor where you may have seen me on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Silicon Valley, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And all three of us are knee-deep in the Marvel lore and mythology, so we were excited to watch Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We're going to go around the horn and see what everybody thought overall. Then we're going to jump into us breaking down them. We're not going to go section by section like we usually do. We're just going to talk overall about what we liked and what we didn't like about the movie. But I'll give you one last spoiler review, or spoiler warning, rather, before we jump into it. Mike, let's start with you as we always do. Please tell us what you overall thought of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Have you seen it a second time? Have you gone back a number of times to see it?
First, I just want to say I'm very happy for you, John, that we're doing a non-spoiler review, because through this Shang-Chi, the spoiler review, just because through the Shang-Chi journey, I've realized how challenged you are with non-spoiler reviews. It very much stresses you out.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So I'm just very happy that we're here now for you.
Thank you very much.
But I loved it. We all saw it together, as we said in the non-spoiler review. We all really enjoyed it. I did see it a second time on opening night with a bunch of our friends in a crowded theater, and it was just it was marvelous. It was great. It was super, super fun. Everything that I felt about the movie the first time, I felt more so about it the second time. Yeah. I think overall, as much as Black Widow was sort of as much as Black Widow was supposed to be the beginning of Phase 4, and then the Disney Plus shows sort of became the beginning of Phase 4. I love the Disney Plus shows. We have obsessively talked about them. But I think what was great about the Disney Plus shows is it took some of the characters that didn't get as much play in the movies and really deepened that and kind of expanded their universes and introduced some new characters that we're going to see in Phase 4. Yeah. And Black Widow felt so much like Marvel. Also introduced a new character in Yelena, who's going to be a big part of Phase 4, but really felt like closing out a chapter of what we have seen thus far. And I think what happened with Shang-Chi is it's a movie that felt 1,000% like a Marvel movie and 1,000% unlike anything we'd seen before. And so there was like all of the excitement of, oh my gosh, we are really back in the Marvel universe, but at the same time going, wow, this is so different, and we're really expanding what the Marvel universe means. And I think in all the great ways that we talk about all the time on the show, about representation, about diversity, Shang-Chi is the best example of doing that the right way, in a way that creates a brand new story in a brand new pocket of the Marvel Universe for us to obsess over. So I'm thrilled with the movie. I can't wait to go see it a third time. And I can't wait to talk about it in more detail now.
Absolutely. First Asian-led Marvel superhero movie. Great point you point out here, Mike. Also, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, starring Simu Liu, Awkwafina, Michelle Yeoh, Tony Leung. So many incredible people a part of this. We're going to jump into all of it. Shannon, you got a chance to see it again a second time? We were texting each other, and you said you went by yourself just to see a crowd's reaction. What was it like going to see it a second time for this review?
Well, my second time was actually with Vogel. We went and saw that
opening night.
On opening night.
That's right. So third time you've seen it now.
So this was a third time. I mean, when I saw how much money it was making, I was kind of like, okay, let me see what the holiday crowd looks like, because I want to see a movie like this. I want to see it with big crowds as much as I can, because I just love that theater. I love the theater experience. I love seeing if the theater at large, the crowd at large, reacts in the same place as I do, or if they react to some place that didn't necessarily hit me the first time.
Yeah.
And it was a blast. Like I had a great time. I mean, from the beginning, I agree with Vogel, and I think we're all on the same page that Black Widow technically was the big screen entrance of Phase 4, but because it actually took place during Phase 3, I mean, it actually, they show us they unfold some things that we didn't know before, much with like the introduction of Yelena. But this one feels like the start of something new. Like it's new, but it's different. I mean, and from moment one, you can tell this is a Marvel movie, but it's also something different. And I think across the board, I feel like the pacing is its own. The story is its own. The mythology is its own. But it has just that Marvel, that Marvel seasoning, like sprinkled in here and there. And it doesn't feel, at least to me, it doesn't feel obligatory. It feels like this is something that naturally kind of fits within the realms of the story. I agree with Vogel. The things that I liked the first time, I loved the third time. The things that kind of stuck out for me a little bit didn't bother me as much, but that doesn't mean they're completely gone. So I would call this a fantastic. This is a fantastic Phase 1 movie. This is a fantastic origin movie. And I don't mean Phase 1 MCU. I mean, Shang-Chi, Phase 1. This was a great introduction to the character.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. Like Black Widow is let's finish up the old business. Let's get done with the old. Yeah, we'll bring on a couple people. Okay, cool, great. This is like Iron Man in 2008. This is the launch of a new phase, arguably a new kind of Marvel universe completely, almost, because of what we've gotten before with the shows in this last few months, and of course a little bit in Black Widow. But really, Shang-Chi was like the announcement movie that this is what it's going to be. This is what you can expect. When I would see it last night in IMAX with the Lady Outlaw, the Eternals trailer playing before it was just so perfect to get you to understand how expansive we are about to go in this new universe of the Marvel cinema. I mean, we might start, changing the terms. What's bigger than universe? Galaxy? We might start changing it to the Marvel Cinematic Galaxy, because there's so much that might be coming, both in a possibly quantum realm and then all the way out to God knows where in Captain Marvel's travels. So there's so much that happens that I think is going to happen. But certainly here, this was a great way to come back to what made it great, Marvel, from the beginning, and then also show you how far they've really come as a movie-making outfit and what they're going to do next in the next phase of the MCU. All right, let's jump into these. First, let's start with the story here. Mike, you're a showrunner. You know what it's like to be in charge of people writing scripts to get to an overall goal at the end here. The overall story is this of a young man trained to be an assassin from a young age who runs away from his family, lives a normal life for 10 years in San Francisco. He's yanked back to going back to his family that he ran from. He fights his father, saves the world, and becomes one of the most powerful superheroes on the planet. So much happening in between those beats. But what did you think? And this is our final spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, go and watch it. Come on back and pick it up here. Michael, overall story. Let's break it down. What did you think? Spoil away.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that's great about what Marvel does great in their origin stories when they're really good is it's actually a pretty simple, straightforward story. I mean, we get like a preamble where we learn about Tony Leung's character. We learn about Wu Wei. We learn about his past with the rings. We kind of learn it as the legend, the way that Shang-Chi's mom is telling him the story. And then we kind of jump right into modern day and we meet our guy. We see the life that he's in. And much like any kind of classic hero's journey, the life that he's in is interrupted by extreme, crazy events. But then once you get to it, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, I've got to go see my sister. Me and my sister get taken by dad. Dad takes us back, says, hey, we got to go get mom. And they're like, that's crazy. Ben Kingsley shows up, and then they kind of go to this magical land, and they have to stop their dad. And like, really, when you break it down, I was thinking about this a second time, like, they're not overcomplicating this story. Like, This is very clearly a story about a family, a father, a mom, a son, and a daughter, and what they mean to each other, what it means to be there for your family, and they don't really deviate too far from that. And what's good about that is it gives you the room for big set pieces, it gives you the room for comedy, it gives you the room for character work. Like, they're not trying to like bury us under mountains of backstory and information and the 10 rings or this like, there's a lot of secrets about the 10 rings, and when we get to the post-credit sequence, we're going to see that is going to clearly play into the bigger Marvel universe. But they keep it really, really clean here. And I think that is to their benefit. particularly when you have two leads who are so fucking charming, like Simu Liu and Awkwafina are. Like, just give them the runway to just like chat with each other and have fun with each other. And in addition, when I say a clean storytelling, I also think the thing that they did that was really smart is, aside from a few beats and a few characters, this is very clean from the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, these are two characters that have lived through the blip, and that kind of comes up. But besides that, like, these aren't people that are tied into anything. And that's really good because they open us up to this whole area of the MCU that we've never seen before, that really kind of delves into Asian mythology and this whole world of Talo. And so I think that, you know, by not weighing us down, like, we see Wong, we see Abomination, and we get a few moments to remind us the universe that we're in, but it doesn't overpower us. So simplicity of storytelling in this case, I think, really, really works to their advantage.
That's a great point, Mike. It walks its own path while occasionally touching on the overall universe, but not needing to make a big deal about it. That's a great point. Shannon, what did you think about the story overall as it was presented here? All the different characters that we got to meet for the first time. Shang-Chi's journey throughout the movie. You know, a young man who is basically happy parking cars. I mean, this is 10 years of his life where he wasn't, you know, having, you know, he says in the movie, I didn't even remember a time when I wasn't training to be an assassin. And until he ran away, that was his mentality. Being there in San Francisco, he essentially having a second childhood later in life where he's actually able to do what he wants and go where he wants to go and sing karaoke and park cars and not have the responsibility of the world or this large criminal organization on him. And then eventually, of course, is brought back because you have to confront it eventually in any family, no matter what the power structure is. You have to confront this situation. What did you think overall the story here?
Yeah, I mean, as Vogel said, I mean, it was very straightforward. I mean, I think like the best Marvel movies, especially the best Marvel introduction movies, kind of hinge on that big third act battle. And when you look at the successful ones, like Iron Man, essentially, what was that last battle? It was him and Ironmonger fighting. I mean, that was the extent of the conflict. I mean, Thor, like the town in New Mexico got wrecked, but ultimately the climax took place in Asgard, where it was removed from our world. Captain America, the climax took place in the past. This one takes place in Talo, and you know, you have the moments, you have the bus fight, which that is sort of his announcement to the world at large. You have the sequence in Macau, but outside of that, everything else is very, very removed. So, which is something I thought which spoke to its strengths, is kind of like you're not wondering, hey, how come no Avengers are showing up? I mean, the one that does show up at the end makes perfect sense. I mean, like they cross paths, especially when you look at the MacGuffin of the 10 rings. I mean, that's really the thing that gets their attention. And the introduction of Tony Leung's character, at the beginning, I can see it being like, well, wait, where are the rings? Where did he get them? And then you find out by the end, like, there is more to tell with this story. We're just not going to tell you yet because it's going to play in to something larger. And I think that's where it worked very, very well. I think story-wise, the only issue that I saw was that third act. Like, when you get to Talo, it is a bit of a shift from what we've been watching, and also you're introduced to an antagonist that we didn't know about for over 2/3 of the movie. And that's where it's still immensely satisfying and fun. It just gets a little unfocused at that point because we've been following Shang-Chi and Katie and Wenwu, and Wenwu is such a dynamic antagonist. I mean, he's right up there with the Killmongers and the Thanoses and the Lokis. Like, this is a guy that we like to see. And then by the end, he's sort of supplanted a little bit by this larger threat, which is, you know, the big CGI monster.
Yeah, but it seems to serve the purpose of redeeming him, right? Because at the end, he hands his soul to that dragon because he doesn't fight it, resist it, then hands the rings over to Shang-Chi, and you see the look on his face of, this is a father passing this on to his son. Story-wise, I understand why they did it, but I get your point about the fact that this is just presented to us way later in the movie rather than throughout, even though we get allusions to a dragon or things of that nature. We don't know if they're talking about a dragon in the water or the dragon at the end that comes out of the dark cave there. We don't know until we get to the end. But it's an interesting point you bring up, Shannon. Certainly something we should touch on. Let's swing back to what you mentioned here, Shannon. Wenwu, how they handled Wenwu. Of course, we know it's kind of an amalgamation of a couple of characters from the comics. The Fu Manchu, which is kind of the racist stereotypical approach they took from back then to make him Shang-Chi's father in the comics, and that approach to the Asian stereotype of a villain type thing. They kind of removed that and brought in someone like Wenwu, which is, I think, a character in the comics as well. And they kind of mixed this mythology in and established him as a completely different approach to a character. Plus, we have him explaining the Mandarin thing at the dinner, which I thought was a brilliant way to handle that. What did you think about how they did, or how they treated Wenwu and created him in this movie, Shannon?
I mean, it was super cool. As someone, like, the Mandarin was a character that they had always wanted to use. Like, he was in the early drafts of the first Iron Man movie. And it's a big character. And also, you're dealing with some stereotypes that were a little problematic.
Yeah.
So,
no, problematic, not a little.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
And so then when they did finally use him in Iron Man 3, the concept of the character, we found out, a lot of folks, myself included, even though I thought Ben Kingsley was hilarious and brilliant, was like, that kind of took the wind out. It was a little bit of a 3-card Monty. So now that they have actually, and like the Marvel one shot, that All Hail the King, where we find out through Scoot McNairy's character that there is a real Mandarin out there, and then we find out we finally get to meet the guy, that it is Wenwu, and they do, I don't know, I guess you would call it a retcon, but he's basically explaining, like, this is what that was. I said kind of a retcon, Vogel. Calm down.
No, it's 100% a retcon.
Yeah, it is.
Like, that is literally the definition of a retcon.
But they didn't have to change that much from what they did. I mean, it was basically like the 10 rings that we meet in Iron Man 1. I think that is the 10 rings. Like, if you do the math on, like, okay, it takes place in 2023. This is how old Shang-Chi was when he left. This is how old Wenwu, or this is the year that Wenwu meets Shang-Chi's mother. It's kind of like, okay, I think the math all works out there. But I'm also trying to watch Shang-Chi beat up bad guys right now. Yes, I thought Wenwu, I thought he was just such a dynamic character. And Western audiences, a lot of us aren't really familiar with Tony Leung's work. And there's a gravity, and there's just a charm that this guy has, that the moment he walks on screen, you have to watch him. And the smallest little things that he does with his face, the smallest expressions that he has. And this is something that you can't teach. I mean, this is something that people just have. And he's one of those performers that is just so dynamic in his screen presence. Whatever issues people might have with the writing, he more than makes up for it in the performance. I mean, he's dynamite.
Yeah, Mike, we've seen him in those who've seen Tony Leung's work, you've seen him in Chungking Express, In the Mood for Love. I first discovered him in Hard Boiled, the John Woo film from the 90s. Sorry about that, I got a frog in my throat right here. But this is a fantastic portrayal by Tony Leung to bring this character to life. And if you're going to retcon a character, as you say they did here in this movie, you want to bring an actor who is going to bring that kind of gravitas onto the set, onto the screen, for people to accept the retcon and go forward with this new badass approach to Wenwu and the 10 rings. What do you think of Tony Leung's performance? What do you think of how they retconned Wenwu and how they moved and kind of mixed in the 10 rings to explain it all, my man?
Yeah, well, what my point to Shannon was, like, a good retcon makes sense. Like, a good retcon is taking the pieces that are on the table and saying, well, how do we work these into a way that makes sense? A bad retcon is we drastically changed everything and you have to go with it. And what they did really well here was, and Kevin Feige's, been really public about this, is in that era of the Marvel, Iron Man 3, with the way they handled the Mandarin and Ben Kingsley, Doctor Strange with Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, they were in a place where they were trying to avoid stereotypes, but in trying to avoid stereotypes ended up taking away potential roles from people of color and kind of going down a road that was like kind of still problematic, just in a different way. And where you have to give Marvel credit is a lot of studios, after doing something like Ben Kingsley and the Mandarin, would say, let's just brush that under the table and pretend it didn't happen. And here, they took that character and put him smack dab in the middle of a new movie with Tony Leung as the actual character he was pretending to be, and did it in a way that sort of nodded to the fact that they didn't really do it correctly the first time, but still took this character and turned him into something that was really great in this movie in Ben Kingsley's role, and put Tony Leung in this role to kind of give the actual character agency of his own, and gave him a speech where he was like, they called me an orange. I mean, like, they just kind of ticked every box to say, we are going to keep this as part of our universe, but we are also going to, within the universe that we live in, point out the silliness of what we did. And I think they handled it. It's like, it's a tightrope. It could have gone really, really poorly, but they kind of threaded that needle in a way that people, I mean, like, Ben Kingsley's character, you're like, well, I hope he's in Shang-Chi too. Like, he was great. Like, he was cracking me up. As far as Tony Leung, I mean, Shan said it all great, but like, he's fantastic. He has this quiet intensity. You just really believe in him. And I think particularly it served them well in the fact that, as you guys were saying, like, the whole idea of, he kind of gets them there and he's like, hey, your mom is talking to me. She's trapped in a cave. I got to go save her. You're like, okay, that could have been super cheeseball, and you would have been like, I don't really know. But he believed it. He was very committed to this, and so I was on board. Like, I was like, okay, I believe in him. I believe that this is really where he's at, and just that, his fighting style, like, I mean, his character is so interesting, because you're like, here's a guy who lived for 1,000 years, was obsessed with power, met this woman, fell in love with her, put it all away, and then when she died, dove right back into it, and now is going to go rescue her ghost from a cave. Like, that's a lot to be playing. And he just sort of effortlessly made you believe in all of it, which I thought was amazing.
Well, I mean, Shannon and Mike, we're dealing with the idea of loss yet again, right? I mean, we just dealt with it in the Doctor Strange What If episode. We dealt with it in all through WandaVision. In essence, we dealt with it in Falcon and Winter Soldier with the loss of Cap. You know, how they were dealing with it in the post-Cap world. And then we dealt with it once again in Loki as well. This idea of loss, you know, my loss of my life, my loss of my freedom, my loss of all these things that were there, or even Sophie, what she's dealing, her loss, you know. So a lot here throughout the first few projects from the MCU in this new phase is about dealing with loss. And certainly we're going to deal with it again, well, a little bit, I guess, in Eternals, when all these people come back and what it ignites. What kind of losses are people going to suffer in that film? We're going to see. But certainly this is a huge part of what we see throughout Shang-Chi as well in this. And you're right, Mike, it could have been so cheap. Watching it again last night, I was like, man, this could have been this. I mean, you see the moment where the audience would be like, what? Really? This is what he's upset about after 1,000 years. You could find another woman, but no, the love was so deep, and this woman was so incredible. They did such an excellent job of laying the groundwork of Lee with that beautiful sequence with them fighting and doing all the slow motion move around where they're looking at each other. They do such a great job of establishing her as this incredible entity that you understand his drive, his desire, his loss to want to get her back, and why he's so blinded, because there's a man who's so powerful. Once again, right, the hero trope of I'm so powerful, yet I can't save the one thing that I want to save. And this is done in a villain context, but still it counts, it works, and it's effective, and they do an excellent job. Plus, I want to throw in, because you guys have covered everything with 10 Rings, and totally, just to clarify real quick, though, a Mandarin and Fu Manchu, that's the combo they kind of used here to create Wenwu. So I apologize if I misspoke there and said Wenwu's in the comics. So it's an amalgamation. So in a sense, it kind of is and kind of isn't.
Right.
But the overall point, though, that I want to make here is the father and son dynamic here that worked so well. I got so emotional watching it last night. The look on his face, they didn't belabor it. They didn't go do something better than I. None of that. It was just the look from Tony Leung to Simu Liu in that moment is so powerful and so moving. And the flashback sequences they throw in, the little scenes to let you know that in his own way, he did love his son very, very much. He just had a different point of view. And how many people have fathers who think they should do certain things and kind of push them to do certain things because they want what's best for them, but they don't have the emotional vocabulary to be able to speak to them about how to get them to achieve these things in life. And they're doing what's best for them. You know what I'm saying? And so that kind of came through really powerfully in Tony Leung's performance. performance as well. And I love that they threw that in there. And yes, it's the father-son thing again in the MCU. But hell, if the mother stuff works for, I don't know. I'm throwing it out there with Disney. We'll see. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to the ladies in this. I mean, Katie, what did you think of Awkwafina? Mike, what did you think of Zai Ling? What did you think of Lee? And also, what did you think of oh God, I'm forgetting the other actresses or the other characters' name. But what did you think of all of them throughout this movie? Michelle Yeoh's character as well. Yeah, what did you think?
I mean, the women in this movie were awesome.
Yes.
I mean, just from top to bottom, the women in this movie were awesome. I loved Awkwafina. I think that Awkwafina was just perfect for this movie. I think that every time she was on screen, I was happy. I really, really am happy they didn't do a romance. Maybe that's in store for these two characters down the road. I don't know, but I really love seeing male-female relationships in these movies where they just get to be really good friends, and that she was the best friend role. She wasn't the damsel in distress role. She wasn't the I'm fighting for you. Like, it wasn't like that. She was his best friend, and she was like his ride or die homie. Like, when he was like, I gotta go to Macau, she's like, you can explain it on the way, I'm going with you. And like, there was no question about it. And you know, and she served that comic relief role to me in that perfect way, that like whenever things were getting a little intense, a little this, a little serious, like you could rely on her to have that moment that you're like, all right, we're back on track on that, whether you like it or not, that Marvel tone of we're going to play things serious, but we're going to remind you that we're having fun with it. And that's really the role that she fulfilled. Zai Ling as Simu Liu's sister, God, what a badass. I mean, just an absolute badass. And I know it's jumping ahead to the post-credit sequences, but like seeing these two and the road that they are headed down, I literally can't wait for the next movie. Like, I mean, this, you know, the movie is so much about, to your point, loss, but also very specifically family. And and not just the loss of their mom, but when the loss of their mom happened, what that did to their family, how each one of them in their own way. I mean, you know, Zai Ling says to Simu Liu and Awkwafina, like when their mom died, Wenwu like wouldn't even look at her. Like he turned his back on his children. Shang-Chi turned his back on his family when he left and never came back. And then Zai Ling, because she had nobody, turned her back on everybody and started her own empire. So you have these three characters who this loss caused them all to break away from their family. And then you watch them all kind of come back in and see how coming back and reuniting like drives them all apart. And, you know, for the amount of time that she was on screen, she was so impactful, and you really, really felt for her as a character. And then Michelle Yeoh can literally do anything. She could literally stand on screen and read a phone book, and I would find it gripping. She is fantastic. And I think she served a really good role too. Again, she is part of this family. I mean, she's a part of this family that they didn't know, but she is a part of this family. She lost her sister. She suffered this loss as well. And she's there to actually supply a really important lesson to Shang-Chi. I mean, Shang-Chi, like I said, he is someone who turned his back on his father, but also there's that scene early on, or in the middle of the movie, but it's a flashback between him and his sister when they're younger, where she says, do you still feel mom like when you're doing the exercises? And he says no. So you get very clearly that this is a character that is cut off from both sides of his family, his mother and his father, and he's gone off and like lived his own life. And coming back, his journey through this movie is to literally, and Michelle Yeoh is the one who gets to say it, to embrace both sides. Like in accepting who his mom was and letting that back in, and letting that loss and that pain back in, and accepting that his dad is his dad and that that's a part of him too. That's what gives him the power. So, you know, like all the women in this movie kind of serving really, really important roles on this journey, but not feeling like second fiddles, feeling like guides, friends, you know, like they really all helped Shang-Chi's story because he's the main character, but all had really rich lives of their own.
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000%. Yeah, Shannon, we're talking about Meng'er Zhang as Zai Ling. We're talking about Awkwafina as Katie, Fala Chen as Lee, Michelle Yeoh as Ying Nan. Just want to get that out there to make clear we got everyone here. What did you think about how they handled the women in this film, and then the roles that they played here? Did you feel that they were very powerfully stamped throughout this movie?
I mean, Fala Chen as their mom, as Lee, was again, for the limited amount of screen time that she had, I mean, she was so impactful. There was just something ethereal about her performance, just something that sort of encapsulated that Tao Lo of it all. Sorry, Siri just popped up. Son of a bitch, it happened again. There was just there. I would compare her to like a Tilda Swinton. There's just something otherworldly about her. Right. And again, for having so little screen time, she was so impactful. The montage of them being a family, the moment they're all playing that Dance Dance Revolution game. I mean, it was just so sweet and so heartwarming. Meng'er Zhang as Xialing, the sister, was so again just a really, really just impactful performance. The way that she was able to play this hurt, this vulnerability that had been scabbed over all these years. I mean, the moment during the scaffolding battle where she saves Awkwafina, it was just, again, that was just such an awesome moment. Like the moment we know they're not going to kill Awkwafina off halfway through the movie. But I'm like, I don't know who's going to catch her. And it's just like, oh shit, it's Xialing. Michelle Yeoh, as you guys have said, I wish she hadn't been in the post-credit sequences of Guardians Volume 2 now. Just because I was like, oh, you're different. Like, separate that. Awkwafina,
you're gonna have to do that with Gemma Chan as well. So yeah, that's just part of the Marvel.
Yeah, but she was blue in Captain Marvel. That's a significantly different look.
All right.
Yeah, she's blue, John. It's a totally different person. She's blue. Come on.
Different accent.
I don't know.
She had an American accent in Captain Marvel. Completely different. Awkwafina is the only one that I would disagree a little bit. And that's because I'm just not a big fan of her comedy. I think she did a wonderful dramatic performance in The Farewell. I thought she was so good. I feel like in something like this, and this is my own baggage that I'm bringing into it. This is not a knock on the movie. This is just my opinion. I feel like her comedy is so inherently broad that her presence in some of those action sequences lessened the stakes. The Hotel California moment didn't really work for me at all. I was just like, this doesn't actually work. I feel like those quieter moments, those smaller moments, especially towards that final action sequence, the moment with her and Shang-Chi at night out by the water, I thought those worked really well. But as a performer, I mean, Awkwafina comedically just doesn't do it for me. I mean, she does have some funny moments, but overall, I didn't love the way she was used. But again, that did not detract from my enjoyment of the movie.
Fair enough. Fala Chen posted this, which I thought was really funny. I want to share it real quick on her Twitter because I thought she was incredible as well. She said, you're doing a good job when your husband is jealous. Her husband, Emmanuel Streshkov, posted this and said, if only my wife could look at me like this. Hashtag Shang-Chi. So you're doing a great job. Your own husband and wife are posting that situation there. So great stuff. But I loved all the women in this movie. I really enjoyed Awkwafina. I hear your criticism, Shannon. I have some of that with Simu Liu. I have a little bit of criticisms with a couple of the emotional beats there. I didn't think he 100% got there, but overall, I enjoyed his performance in the movie. Same thing with Awkwafina. Yeah, maybe there are a couple of moments, but overall, I enjoyed it. I mean, that airplane sequence was hilarious. Having that stewardess interrupt them and the beef vegetable thing. Again, with a lesser comedian, I don't think that would have worked as well as it did, but it did work in that sequence. And you're right. The conversations by the water are great between them and her, like having that moment for herself and her journey. She's spoken about it in numerous interviews. The character of Katie, the journey she went on, she connects it to the journey a lot of Asian American people go through where they have this pressure from their family. They're trying to figure out what to do and they kind of disconnect until they can figure out what they want to do. So she really wanted to bring that part of her character proudly into the movie. And I think she did a great job with that. Love Michelle Yeoh. I mean, the woman, she's still doing her thing. Someone posted a video from the 90s with her and Cynthia Rothrock doing an awesome fight sequence. You're like, this is almost 30 years ago for the love. No, it is 30 years. Jesus Christ. And yet I don't know what her, age-defying cream is, but we should all get buttloads of that because it's incredible how she looks and how she can move. And all of that was really great. But serving the purpose of the story, the conversations she has, really, really powerful. And yes, Xialing, Meng'er, what she does with that character, she does not become the whiny, brother or sister who was left behind, like Loki is a little bit in the first Thor. She very much was like, well, at 16, I broke the hell out of here and I started my own thing. She didn't sit around whining and feeling sorry for herself. She took agency. She took control of her life. And I liked that they had that as her character and as her storyline as well. Really powerfully done. And as I said, Fala Chen, just great as the mom movie, doing all the sequences, the movie. She's so gorgeous, works so well in this, and you believe it. And her sacrifice, it's a really noble moment in the movie. And the movie only has a couple of those really noble moments, but they're powerfully done when you see them. Mike, you were going to say something?
No, I think you make a really good point about Xialing's character, where it would be so easy, particularly knowing where this character looks like she's going to go. Yeah. It would be really easy to have her kind of be that very stereotypical, I'm gonna kind of complain about how you left me the whole time.
Right.
It would have been easy to go down that road. And the fact that she is very clear on you left and that's kind of fucked up, but I'm still going to help you. I'm still going to do this. She is very clear in her goals, and she's very confident in her critiques of her brother. There's no whininess. There's no sort of I'm kind of annoyed with her as a character. She makes good points. And she went out and lived her life and did her stuff, but she's also not that person who's like, well, now I'm not going to help you because you didn't help me. She's like, look, I'm going to help you. It's a great moment where he's like, I thought you left us. And she's like, well, now you know how it feels. Now let's go fight.
It was just one moment. That's it. And
now you know, and now let's do our shit. And it just makes you really, really like her a lot, which I think is going to make, again, where they're going seemingly in Shang-Chi 2 and beyond, going to be like a gripping battle between brother and sister.
I agree. Well, speaking of comedy, let's swing to the big reveal, and that was Trevor Slattery. Shannon, I'm gonna go back to you here. The lady almost jumped out of her seat because she loves Trevor Slattery. She loves that character. Maybe not what they did with the Mandarin, but she loves Ben Kingsley in that character. Having him come back, having the way he's used. In my opinion, it was great, and then it almost derailed the movie before they got back on track. What did you think about how they handled this and kind of did a second recon in essence, in the situation down there with their conversations with him?
I mean, going into it, I know we had kind of chatted well, at the end of that short, I mean, they got him. So it would make sense that they would have him. But as you get into halfway into the movie at that point, that's just not where your head is.
Yeah, right.
You're fully sort of ensconced in the idea that Wenwu is going to take his guys into Ta Lo, and if they don't find his wife, they're going to burn it down. So the moment that you hear this sort of otherworldly growl, and they kind of start searching their cell, and they find this door to a makeshift dressing room.
And I like Awkwafina going, you're walking towards it? You're walking towards it? Yeah.
I mean, I thought Ben Kingsley is so funny as this character. And again, it's the same guy from Iron Man 3, but with a different perspective. His worldview has changed because of his circumstances. The fact that he can't and I know some people kind of dinged it for this. I didn't care that some people the fact that he could understand Morris, I thought was so funny. And the fact when Simu Liu and Katie see Morris, and they're like, what is that? He's like, what's what? What is that? He's like, you can see him too. I'm not crazy. I mean, everything that he did before they had to go into the forest, I thought he did such a great job. Yeah. The one moment that it kind of took me out was, again, during that final battle, and they're cutting over to everyone looking very serious, ready for this fight, and they cut over to him. It's like, what are you doing there? Get out of there. Have a bucket of water ready for people.
Have you ever met an actor? Of course they're going to take the role on in that moment. What are you talking about?
But, I mean, the whole thing with him, it looks like he's died, and Morris is going over kind of nudging him with his sort of faceless front. And he's like, it's just a performance, mate. Get down here and join me. I'm assuming they will bring him back for Shang-Chi 2 if they go back to Ta Lo. And I hope we haven't seen the end of Trevor Slattery, because it's very, very funny.
What did you think, Mike? Did you enjoy it? Did you think it derailed the movie in any way, shape, or form?
To me, it did not derail the movie. Okay. I think it was great that he was the token character in this movie there for some comic relief. And like I said before, I think Marvel did a great job of. It would be really easy to be like, Trevor Slattery, not our finest moment. Let's put him under the rug and not return to this again. And to put him in this movie in the role that he is in and kind of supply the comic relief, kind of give you that little link to the rest of the MCU, I thought they handled it really well. Yeah. I love that he is a fucking moron. Like, his speech about the reason he loves acting is because when he saw Planet of the Apes, he became an actor because he saw Planet of the Apes, and if they could teach those monkeys to act, then he could really do some shit. Like, I was like, this guy is so dumb, but so enjoyable in his dumbness. And I think they did a nice job. I know in Black Panther with Martin Freeman's role, some people were like, why did we have to give him his big hero moment? Why did we have to have him be... Now, I like that because I like Martin Freeman and I think it worked for that character in the world, but I do understand some people being like, oh, okay, well, we have to have this guy. And with Slattery, he didn't really have a hero. Sure, he was there in the battle at the end, but it's not like he was not integral to this battle. He realized there was some soul-sucking demons and said, I'm going to play dead. And so I just thought again, they kind of course corrected there and said, okay, this is not his moment. This guy, maybe he'll have a moment one day down the road, but for now, this is what his role is. And I think it was great. And I think it sort of, in a subtle way, sort of said, okay, this guy... What we did with him in Iron Man 3 was ridiculous, and now we're going to make kind of a joke of him as we have more serious characters that are proper representation take the ball and run with it, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I liked him, and yeah, to me, just as they got to Talo, as soon as he came out, I mean, if he hadn't receded to the back, I think it would have thrown the movie off, because the movie did such an incredible job of laying the foundation of a very serious approach to this story, very serious approach to this family. Yeah, there's the karaoke scenes at the beginning, but once it gets going, it's about this journey that both of them are, both Katie and Shang-Chi are in this journey of self-discovery of where they're going to go and, kind of use their talents as their friend scolds them about doing earlier in the movie. It is about that journey, and they get to the dad. And remember, Wenwu has them thrown in jail because they tried to kind of stop him, and he flips both of them over, and even Katie yells and gets taken away. So it's a very serious approach, and then you have this, and that's very cool and it's fun. They get into Razor Fist Scar, which is, again, a very Marvel thing to do. They have the humor. And the fact that he would graffiti his own car and announce himself, it does work, and it kind of doesn't work, but they made it work in this situation. And then when he gets to Talo, and the sequence through the forest, brilliant, very brilliant. And then when they get there, gladly they move him aside. And yeah, he has the little soccer moment with the kids, which one of our followers pointed out as a bit of a shot at the idea of whether China created soccer or the Britain created soccer. Apparently there's a centuries old battle about that. So that was a great throw in. I love that he's a Liverpool fan, as I'm a Liverpool fan, but this all works. And then he's pushed to the side perfectly when he needs to be. So let's move on to some the fight choreography real quick. What did you guys think of these sequences on the bus, on the scaffolding, the fight scene between Shang-Chi and Wenwu as well, and of course the fight scene with him while he's there against the purple background, which I think is beautiful. What did you think about all these fight sequences there, Mike?
I thought they were great. Marvel, it's kind of a plus minus depending on your director. Sometimes you get a movie and you're like, oh, I love this movie. The way the acting was, the battles were shot was okay. The way the fighting was shot was fine. Or a movie like Captain Marvel where you're like, oh, I don't really like these fight scenes at all. Or you get the Russo brothers on the other end where you're like, didn't know the Russo brothers could direct fight choreography, but these fights are great. And thankfully for this movie, the fight scenes are great. It's far enough away that you can really see what's going on. You stay on shots long enough because these guys and girls know what they're doing, so you don't need to do a lot of fast cutting to make it look good. You just pull back and let them do their thing, and it's powerful. And so I thought they did a really, really good job. I mean, kind of right from that bus fight at the beginning, it was like, oh, okay, this looks great. We're going to get the good version of the Marvel action sequences in this movie.
What did you think, Shannon, about the choreography, the action sequences as well? I'm sure maybe a couple of stunt performers on this film, perhaps.
I would have to check. Well, they shot this one in Australia, so
that's right.
Probably not. It's possible. But the opening bus fight.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right up there with the Winter Soldier elevator fight. I mean, it's that close quarters combat. You have sort of the X factor of the bus, and Razor Fist ends up slicing the brakes. The bus driver gets knocked out. I mean, everything about that sequence was awesome. Simu Liu going inside of the bus, outside of the bus. I mean, so much, such a blast to this is the character's first fight. I mean, you think about Iron Man, think his first flight. Think about Steve Rogers chasing down the Hydra agent. You think about Thor's fight on the ice planet on Jotunheim.
Oh, yeah.
This was right up there with your sort of intro fight for the movie, and just such a blast. The scaffolding fight, that shot where he's going to save Katie, that he's popping these guys in the face. He's swinging inside of the scaffolding, outside of the scaffolding. The fact that when he catches her, and then that's also when Shaolin gets reintroduced, just so much fun. The fight between him and his sister in the ring.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that moment when she kind of, kicks him in the face and he's not expecting it like that, you feel that. You just felt that in the theater. Yeah, I thought the fight choreography was fantastic. A lot of stuff, the fight he had with the Death Dealer before Wenwu gets introduced, or before Wenwu kind of stops him from stabbing him. Everything with the fight choreography was awesome. And in the fight between him and Wenwu and Shang-Chi at the end, I mean, because that's like a 3-level fight. And by the end, when Wenwu saves him from the Dweller in the Dark, everything was just super powerful, super emotional. I mean, I know in the trailer, the moment where he says, "Is this what you wanted?" I think we as an audience sort of presumed, okay, this is the end of the fight. And I was like, no, this is end of part 2 of the fight. Right. There's still a whole other section to go. Yeah, I thought it was awesome. And I really thought the dragon versus the Dweller in the Dark was awesome as well, even though that was all the computers, but still fantastic.
Yeah, I don't understand the complaints about the CGI. I mean, I think it was fantastic. I thought it was well done. Certainly the Black Panther CGI, I'd have way more complaints about in that final scene than I would in this final scene. I thought they handled it really, really well. I respect people's issues with it, but I personally had no problem with it. Even more so a second time, really did not have an issue with the CGI. I love the choreography as well throughout. Shout out to Andy Cheng, who choreographed most of the movie. He's worked with Jackie Chan for quite some time, and had a great time doing it. And of course, Destin Daniel Cretton, who's the director of the movie, he threw in a couple of Kung Fu Hustle references. One of the actors who's in charge of the archers there, working with Awkwafina, he was in Kung Fu Hustle. I think it was the landlord there as well. So there's a lot of homages throughout the movie. Mike, I'll swing back to you real quick, and we're going to jump into the post-credit scenes in just a second. But real quick, Destin Daniel Cretton, how did you feel he did with this movie as an origin movie, but also as the 25th movie in the MCU, coming in with his unique point of view? How did you feel he did as a director in this film?
I mean, look, for the 25th movie in the MCU to have people this excited, he must have done something right. I mean, that's really, and I think it's because he was really focused on telling this story as authentically as he could. And I think to your point about all the references to whether it be Kung Fu Hustle, Crouching Tiger, there's so many references in here to other films that came before it, not in the Marvel universe, but in Asian cinema, in martial arts films and everything. And I think that this was kind of his love letter to all of that. And like I said, I think he kept it simple. I mean, I think that despite the fact that we end with this giant CG battle between two giant monsters and brother and sister, it was a really clear story throughout. And he gave himself the space to really dive into those action sequences, dive into those humorous moments. And, I get people's complaints. It is the eternal debate on, do you want a super serious superhero movie? Do you want a light and fun superhero movie? And Marvel, for better or for worse, depending on where you land on it, is very clear on what their tone is. And this is an all ages tone. So you're going to have some of the lighter moments that maybe the older, more serious superhero fans are like, oh, why'd they have to do that? But you did it because you got a 6-year-old kid sitting next to you with their eyes as big as saucers being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. So, it works for everyone. And I think that's what's great about it, is that these are movies that everyone can share. And for a director to come in, like I said, at the 25th movie,
in this universe that has been building, and have everybody share this in a way that, just like with Black Panther, that this is a very specific story that is very specifically representation in an awesome, amazing way, but in a way that is accessible to all audiences, that we can all kind of revel in this. Obviously, if you are Asian watching this movie, it means a ton to you to see this much representation on screen. But I think for all of us to be able to sit and see these characters kind of take the spotlight, like, to me, it feels great. And I think he nailed it.
Shannon, he weaved in a lot of things. He brought in another choreographer as well, Brad Allen, and he said in an interview that Marvel really wanted to get the kung fu right, so they brought in Brad Allen, who had been a person who had been taken under Jackie Chan's wing, and he choreographed a lot of the kung fu sequences. The film is dedicated to him because he tragically passed away at 48 years old. I think it was earlier this year. And so just seeing that this is the kind of dedication, he understood, Daniel Cretton, what his responsibility was to this film and what he wanted to get across. This is an Asian film. It isn't just a Chinese film, because I think Daniel Cretton is Japanese, and there are people from different cities or different countries throughout the cast. So it's very much an Asian film, and he wanted to get that across very powerfully, but also still have it appeal in a universal way, no matter where you're watching this from. What did you think about how he did as a director?
I mean, and I think I already said this in the non-spoiler review, but much like Coogler with Black Panther and James Gunn with Guardians and the Russos taking over from Cap over to the Avengers, like this, he was the guy. He was the guy to do this. I mean, you look at the different styles of fighting, the kind of more Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon of Talo, the kind of the more magical, the elemental way of how Lee fought, to just the way Shang-Chi was fighting throughout most of the movie. I mean, he was the guy to do it. And yeah, I think he did a great job. And I would presume that he would be coming back for the inevitable sequel.
I agree. I think he should absolutely come back, like Coogler, like James Gunn's going to come back for the third Guardians as well. All right, let's move into the post-credit scenes. Michael, we'll start with you. What is this beacon? What is going on here? Wong with Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner. Captain Marvel, longer hair, so clearly some time has passed since Endgame. Bruce Banner back to not being Professor Hulk. He's back to being regular Banner, and he's got the sling from the snapping. What did you think about them breaking down these rings and this beacon? What are we expecting to see from this, man?
Well, this is what, I mean, God, I love this post-credit sequence so much. It was so great because, like I loved that, like, this movie got to kind of live on its own 2 feet. That, like, yes, Slattery's there. Yes, you see Wong and the Abomination. But yes, they mention the blip and how we live in a world where everyone can disappear and then get blipped back into existence. But it very much is in its own place over here. And then you get to the end of the movie and Wong shows up and he's like, all right, come with me. And you really, like, the two of them stepping into that portal at the end, you're like, oh, these two are now stepping into the Marvel universe. Like, it was this amazing feeling. And then you get to the post-credit sequence and all the questions we had about the 10 rings, you're like, oh, okay, valid questions. Everybody has them. I do think it's interesting that apparently for the entire time that Wenwu was using these 10 rings, nobody really noticed. Like, whatever he was doing didn't, like, and it's the blue light when he was using it throughout the entire movie. Like, they were powerful tools that he used, but whatever he was doing didn't catch everyone's attention. And the moment that Shang-Chi did it, in whatever way he did it, the light now is the exact same color as the light that we see when Doctor Strange and Wong and everybody used their abilities, and it caught their attention. And so something happened. Something was different. And then, so you have Wong sitting there examining it, and I'm like, okay, cool, we're going to learn more about the 10 rings. Then you cut to Bruce Banner, and you're like, oh, he's no longer in his Hulk form. He's still got the cast, and you're like, okay, of course Bruce Banner would be the one. This is where they do a great, where it's like, in a normal movie, you're like, well, why wouldn't they get Bruce Banner? He seems to be the smartest guy. Why wouldn't they do this? And you're like, well, it's a different movie. It's a different world. And this post-credit sequence is like, oh yeah, you would get Bruce Banner, and there he is. And also, is this alien in origin? Well, there's Carol Danvers. Let's ask her about it. And to have them all sort of talking about it was great. I love the fact that for all the shit that Marvel got about Carol Danvers never being around and being this Deus Ex Machina, they're leaning into it because she fucking is like, I've got to go.
Yep.
He's got my number. And then Banner's like, I don't have her number. She always does this. She's always leaving. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, look, I guess this is going to be a part of where we're going with her. To the point that I do think, so a couple things. Phase 4 is fucking bonkers. We already know that we've got this fucking multiverse happening.
Yeah.
And then we've got Julia Louis-Dreyfus over here, like, recruiting people for her own purposes, and we don't know what that's about. And now we've got this beacon in the Ten Rings that is sending a signal to who knows where. And you're like, man, this is like, where are they going with all of this? How are all of these things going to tie together? Yeah. It's bonkers. And then I think what they did that was so great is this first credit sequence is all about getting you stoked about the bigger MCU, the bigger mysteries. Like, this is our new Infinity Stones. Where's it going to go? And then you get to the final post-credit sequence, which is Xialing back at the fortress. Yeah. And, you know, Shang-Chi had said she was taking everything apart. She's clearly not. She's taken over the Ten Rings, doing it her own way. A bunch of women fighting in the courtyard, even though women didn't used to be allowed to fight. Giant satellite, a bunch of graffiti art everywhere. And not only is it badass, but you're like, oh, this series, this story of Shang-Chi is about family. And this next movie is going to be about family, but now it's going to be brother versus sister.
Possibly.
Possibly. That is my assumption based on some of the comic stories and based on what they were setting up. And I kind of came out equally as excited about Shang-Chi kind of joining the bigger Marvel Cinematic Universe as I am about seeing his personal story and where it goes in the next movie, which I think is a win-win for these post-credit sequences.
Yeah, what did you think, Shannon, about both post-credit sequences? What stood out for you? What are you going to remember here?
Well, first, I think we have to talk about Wong and Abomination.
Yes.
Because we don't know how Wong, because he calls him Emil. Yeah. So, like, we don't know exactly how they're connected. Like, when they go through that portal at the end of their fight, that sure didn't look like Kamar-Taj to me. That looked like something a little more modern. So, how has Wong gotten hooked up with Emil Blonsky?
Some people are speculating that's the raft. So I don't know. We'll see. But
I mean, we know Blonsky was in custody at the end of Incredible Hulk. Yep. Like that's sort of where our knowledge ends about him. But
why are they getting along? Like, is he going to be a good guy now? Is he going to be?
I think he's probably. I mean, it seems like he might be recruited for something. Yeah. I mean, for what we don't know, but it seems like they are trying. Like he is providing a service in exchange for something, possibly to get out of to get his sentence ended early. The moment that Wong came into the restaurant at the end, I thought that was just so. I thought that was so fantastic, and much like Vogel said, like they're literally stepping into the Marvel universe. I mean, in the comics, the rings have an intergalactic origin. So this beacon, whatever it's like, we don't know who in space it is calling. But again, I would love to get a peek at the Marvel dry erase board about where all of this is leading. And the thing that I really loved about the Ten Rings with Xialing taking over is. I don't think this necessarily, like, she's not a bad guy. I think she has a particular idea and that she's going to use the Ten Rings as a way to accomplish that idea. And reason dictates that is going to be in conflict with what Shang-Chi thinks. So, super, like, really great post-credit sequences.
Yeah, and apparently you can read this run, Brothers and Sisters, that came out in 2020 from Jean Lewin Yang, illustrated by Dyke Ruin and Philip Tan, that explores this conflict between brother and sister in the Shang-Chi universe when she kind of takes over a version of the Ten Rings and christens them the Five Weapons Society, and what that leads to. So maybe they'll be borrowing some of that for the sequel. I think she's going to play the Loki kind of version. She's going to play good and bad at the same time, depending on what works for her and what she's trying to do with that Ten Rings. And she may have a bigger point of view than Shang-Chi does about what to do with the Ten Rings. So we shall see with that. One more thing I wanted to throw in. Never mind. Mike, go ahead. I was going to throw it in. When it comes to me again, I'll bring it up. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think that bottom line, I mean, I agree with Shannon. I don't think that she is a bad guy. But I think that Shang-Chi's opinion on the Ten Rings and what the Ten Rings has done for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years, like, not good stuff. not legal stuff. And I think that just the world that she came up in and, you know, having this kind of underground fight ring, her opinion on what she wants to do will be in conflict with his opinion as being a, you know, I'm part of like this superhero community now. And I think it's just going to be really interesting. But to your point about Loki, I think that she will be a great character because she is not a mustache twirling bad guy. She is not a, well, now I want to take over the world. Whatever she's going to do, she's going to think she's doing for good reasons. And as we were saying about her arc in this movie, they avoided making her a one-note character. And so that's what makes me intrigued to see where she goes. Like, I'm kind of into her version of the 10 Rings. And that's going to be more fun than going, oh, I'm just the bad guy, and now I'm going to be the bad guy in the next movie.
Yeah, and having Florian Munteanu, who was kind of had a little bit of comic relief at the end of the film, and having Ronnie Chieng, who's a very well-known Malaysian comic, be a part of her two people who are standing there, lets you know that there's going to be a little bit of a lighter approach to her approach to being in charge of the 10 Rings. So it's going to be more complex, I guess, the way they present what she does with it, which I think is great. One thing I wanted to point out, this is what I remembered. Could that beacon be the Fantastic Four? Not alien in origin, but out there somewhere, intergalactic. Are they stranded somewhere? Is that the beacon that leads them to find Reed Richards and the crew there and bring the Fantastic Four into the MCU? That's what struck me as I was watching it the second time.
Well, I think the 10 Rings are they're sending the beacon. So I don't think it's receiving a beacon.
Okay, all right, but how is that happening? I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe not.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
The 10 Rings... The 10 Rings are a little bit older than the Fantastic Four would be. So even if, and I think you make a good point that, like, look, the Fantastic Four are intergalactic, potentially multiversal. Like, Reed Richards is the biggest brain in the Marvel Universe, makes Tony Stark look like he's like, in elementary school. So the intergalactic nature of what the 10 Rings are could absolutely be a way to bring the Fantastic Four in, or it could be tied to the Celestials because it's real old. Like, so there's a lot of options for what it could be. But once again, just a big indication that wherever Phase 4 is going, they're going big.
Absolutely. One last thing. I know you got to run, Mikey, but one last thing. The music. What can we say about the music? I think this soundtrack rivals. Well, not rivals in a way that it's better, but certainly you can argue that this soundtrack is maybe the second best soundtrack or the best soundtrack compared to the Black Panther. Like, Black Panther's number one, in my opinion, and then you've got this soundtrack just slightly below. But I thought it was incredible. What did you guys think of the music, real quick?
Soundtrack or score?
Both. How about both?
A score, I would not put it in the top. I thought it had some good moments, but I do agree that the soundtrack that they compiled, yes, that was very good.
Yeah, Mike.
I think what's great about the score is that it feels very much tied to this movie. I mean, it doesn't feel like it would fit anywhere else. Like, it very, very much like feels like Shang-Chi, and I loved it. I've been listening to it on kind of a loop since we saw the movie.
Joe P. West, shout out to him. Yeah, I think the soundtrack is stellar. Watching it a second time, I was into all the music, so I'll definitely be buying. I think I'll get an LP form because I want to kind of hear it on my record player, see what it sounds like. So shout out to everybody involved in the soundtrack and the score. All right, final thoughts here. Let's wrap up. Mike, where do you place this now after having seen it twice? Where is this on your list of MCU films?
Well, the good thing about the MCU list is, aside from like a couple at the very, very bottom, like, it's a list of a bunch of movies I like. I think that Shang-Chi lands somewhere in the top of the middle. Like those, it's not in my like top 5, top 10, but it's just below the top 10 as far as where the movies go. And as a lot of people are saying, I do think it is one of the stronger origin stories in the MCU. Like, if you were just to take only origin stories, it's real close to the top. Yeah,
I agree with that. Well, Shannon, where do you rank it?
I currently, and the MCU ranking list, like it's liquid, like it is constantly moving. Where I have it right now is at number 12, just ahead of Spider-Man: Homecoming and just behind Captain America 1.
Oh,
yeah.
My list includes all of the Disney Plus series now. I added those in, and Shang-Chi is number 13. Between Thor Ragnarok and Spider-Man Far From Home.
It's in the top 10 for me. In the bottom half of the top 10, but it's in the top 10. I like it more than Ant-Man. I like it more than Spider-Man Homecoming. and I like it. I like it just a little bit less than Captain America: Winter Soldier, which I love to pieces. So yeah, it's in the maybe 8 range, I think, right now for me overall. And I think the more I see it, it's going to grow in its estimation. We shall see. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for the spoiler review of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Hope we covered everything that you wanted us to talk about. If not, please let us know in the comment section below what you felt about it and what you felt about everything we were talking about. Oh my God, I'm taking Michael's job. Never mind. Shannon, what do we got to tell them?
If you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at Geek_Buddies. On Instagram, at _Geek_Buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is at NK2. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Well, as John just said, we love hearing from you guys. And we definitely want to know what you guys thought of Shang-Chi. So definitely leave some comments below. Let us know what you thought. Did we miss anything? Is there any glaring things that we didn't touch on that you want to hear about? Obviously, hit the like button below. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. If you are listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us some stars. Leave us some comments. It helps us go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing that you guys can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, and tell everybody that if they want to be geeky, they want to have buddies. We are the place where that happens. Come on and hang out with us.
There you go. Come on and join us in our universe for sure, the GBU. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time with another brand new review episode or a brand new show here from the
Geek
Buddies.